who are you being in your family, and what gifts are you bringing? Are you stepping into the leadership, which is what it is, to actually bring something new that's coming from love and compassion and acceptance, and of course self-care and communion with self, and resourcing ourselves so that we can be the waves that keep lapping on the shore and changing the topography of the earth.
You're listening to the Mana Mama podcast. Welcome back for another beautiful episode with a wonderful guest ready to talk into the big picture of the beauty and the power of our hearts and of humanity. If you're new to Mana, please jump onto our website and check out our in-person gatherings and our online trainings, www.themanamovement.org. Our next event in America has just sold out. That's Montana, May 2025. And we're super excited about our European dates next year. We've got the Humanity Gathering happening in Ireland in April. In June, we're back in Croatia for the Zora Women's Sailing Conference. And then in July, we're doing another Humanity Gathering on the spectacular island of Crete. Get in touch, fam. Jump on board. The Mana Movement School of Humanity is growing worldwide, and this is such a fun movement to be part of. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this wonderful conversation with beautiful Shems Heartwell. Well, Shems, welcome to the Mana Mama podcast. It's so beautiful to have you here. I feel very honoured to be talking with you, to drop deeper into who you are and what's in your heart, and the wisdom you've cultivated to walk in the way that you do, Shems. I as I said, I don't know much, and that's why I've been so keen to talk to you on this podcast and share you with the Mana tribe and hopefully many others. We have a lot in common. We have a lot of shared passions. I feel that. But yeah, I'm always fascinated to learn more and learn, from people that have walked so much dedication to relationship, to humans and our ability to connect, in a sane and mature way. And so I was looking at your bio and I'm like, wow, you've put in the years. From what you've written here on your website, over 20 years of experience with mentoring, and guiding, people in transformational ways relative to relationship. Even heaps of training, heaps of passion, obviously here in energetics as well, with the qigong that you love and the mystical principles of healing that you've trained in. And yeah, it's obviously a very rich and well-rounded path you've walked. And I would love to know, to begin with, where it all started. Like, when did you, in your life, when did you know that you wanted to help people or understand relationship to this depth? How old were you? What was happening for you?
Well, thank you for just having me here with you. And I'm just happy that you and I got to have some time in person too, when we were, at Convergence in Washington. And so it just feels sweet to have this drop in after having a little space together. So Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I guess we're going to go right into it. I think, like many of us, it started with a lot of wounding, and having a family of origin with a lot of trauma. And my childhood having, a father who was born in Germany, who lost his parents at the age of 1 and was orphaned for many years. And then his mom's sister found out he was still alive to live in the U.S. and brought him to the America. And both my mom's side too, in Germany, her grandmother lost her parents when the Russians took her mother in the war. And so she lived barn to barn and had my mom. And so there's just like this history of like what transpired, particularly in Europe and that time in Germany. And so both my parents are immigrants to the US, and my father just he just passed recently this summer, but a lot of trauma in his system. And so his ability to kind of be loving wasn't there often. And his violence, his aggression, his shutting down, his like fits of anger were super hard to endure as a young boy, and my mom left him at the age of 6. And for lots of reasons, but for some reason I stayed with him, and my brother and my mom went and lived with my grandmother. And I think some karmic spiritual alignment had me have the right recipe to stay with my father and live with him, because in some way I made this choice, looking at him and feeling sorry for him, to stay with him.
Yes.
And
Wow.
so if you ask me like when did I make a choice on some level to be in service, or to, it was like something in me could feel him and almost like knew if we all left, it'd be too much. Maybe, I don't even know. It's like not a rational thing. I stayed with my father, which was really hard. You know, it was really hard to be alone with him. And because of that, like I had all kinds of like learning disabilities and like emotional problems in school. And fortunately I had athletics and ways I, did thrived in some ways, but not in others, really struggled. And, what happened with my father, I think, is it turned on an acuity or attunement in me to kind of feel like I could feel him before he'd open the garage to come home. I was already a little on alert, like how upset might my dad be when he gets home, because we didn't have a lot of money. So he was really cautious about how much food I ate. Like if I ate too much bread or too many Triscuit crackers, because I was a hungry growing boy and I was a bit now malnourished.
Yeah.
And so, like my system would read what's his state before he came in the house.
Yeah.
And I'd already be wondering, should I be in that room or should I actually go in the backyard and not be available yet when he enters? And of course I'm longing for his attention and his love. And so that set something in motion. And in that time, I think I like just learned a lot of subtle, sensitive strategies to survive on some level, or to thrive, or to be able to get by. And if I fast forward through that childhood time, at a certain point, like around 14 or 15, I started to push back and fight back, and not tolerate like the anger and question it. And like a good young buck does in our world, right? They start to go, wait a minute, this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. I can't handle this. And then what was interesting is I was throwing a Nerf football at the age of 14 and my bone shattered because I was so malnourished. Actually, like I didn't have enough, like I was, living on microwave food and milk that was coming from probably unhealthy cows in
Yes.
California at the time. So my bone shattered. So it was this catalyst to have me go live with my mom. So I made this big shift to go from father to back to my mother, who I visited through that time and had a really great relationship with and missed dearly. So I moved to my mom, and all of a sudden I had a lot of food, a lot of nourishment. She'd make me 2 lunches and I had a lot of care, and I started getting much more love and attention. And I think that was perfect timing, because like my heart probably started to open a little bit, and I started at a new school and kind of had a fresh start. So there was a beginning of something new there. And I started to, I think I was going into the 8th grade then. And then I went to high school and let's just say I started to blossom a little more because of that time. And then when I went to college, I wasn't thriving still. I was in Santa Cruz going to college, and I was struggling with school and things like that. But I started to have mentors come in my life. Like I was a lifeguard in the summers, and I had this woman who was 10 years older than me that like took me under her wing and started to spend time with me, and saw something in me enough that she was interested and curious, but started to bless me with like kind of some maturity and some gifts that started my journey of being like not in the same age group sometimes as like the seniors in high school. Like I didn't have the interest of just going and getting drunk and doing bong hits or whatever. Not that I wouldn't do them, but I wasn't turned on by that. Like I was going to college parties with her in Berkeley, and I was starting to kind of hang out. And so that it set some things in motion. And then it just continued where I met these older elders or friends that took me under their wing while I was like doing school and doing life. And then at a certain point, like I just started to realize that like I would shut down a lot. I would close off a lot. Like I would have the anger inside of me that my father had, but I wouldn't, it wouldn't go outward. It would go inward.
Right.
I'd be in relationship and like something would get hard, and I'd have these like fits almost inside myself that were just like my father. And I would just shut down and close off and withdraw. And we'd call it stonewalling now at this point, but out of a lot of like not knowing what to do and maybe freezing in the nervous system. And then I was in like a really meaningful relationship and super deep. And I would hit these thresholds when things got hard. And I started getting curious about like, what is that? Why am I doing that? Like what's going on? And then her and I started to work with Gay and Katie Hendricks. If some people on this call will know who they are, but we started doing these workshops with them, and we did like Tony Robbins and David Dieta, and we did a lot of these like workshops. We started to kind of seek out people to work with, and she was definitely like in that track too of consciousness and evolution, and maybe even ahead of me in some ways too, of being more willing. And it began this journey of like curiosity and learning and mentoring and having these people where I was like, my lights were on, like, I want something better. I don't like what's happening inside of me. I don't want to keep shutting down. I don't want to be like, I don't want to have my heart blocked when like things are hard. And so out of pain, I reached out and I was curious and open. And then the Katie Hendricks world ended up being like 3 years of mentoring with them, and then becoming friends with them in some ways too, and doing Christmas with them and stuff like that. And like, there was a real blessed time of being in their facilitated rooms, whether it was like 5 days or 10 days, was so intense.
Yeah.
Like I would hit these thresholds just on day 3 where like I couldn't handle even being in the room. It was, my system was so used to going out and reading the room and reading everybody, and even probably like I would probably like chameleon adapt to try to be in a way that people could be like me or want to see me. Like my system would overly read, which I call overly sensitive. Yes. Is that we're overly reading what's happening around us, and we're trying to morph and change to fit into what we think is wanted. Couldn't do it. I was short-circuiting. And so I was short-circuiting, and I wanted to check out and all that. And so that learning, just having Katie as a mentor, I began to learn some new skills of like staying home in my system. And being with myself enough and pulling my attention back home, but not shutting off. And it began this journey that has just been a continual one since then, with a handful more really valuable mentors. But that was I would call it like the launch pad that like really fired up another way of being in the world that we don't get modeled, right, by the insanity of our cultures that we live in, right?
Absolutely. And thank goodness you had that curiosity. Like when you mentioned that, had this curiosity. What was when you were self-reflecting, thank goodness you had that, because of obviously that has just opened up the pathway. And it feels to me like that is one of the magical ingredients for anyone to turn relating into a pathway of solid discipline, mastery, fascination, adventure, joy, mystery. Like there's so much richness in relating, but the curiosity is key. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Like
huge. That curiosity and willingness and openness to be receptive to the unknown, right? To the great mystery, to people and situations, and to see. Katie would call it friendly cannibalism, which is not a coolest word, but she like, when we see something we love and resonate with, or like we like, oh, that person is embodying something or living something that like is magnetic to me. Then the friendly cannibalism is our system starts to like want to eat that and absorb that, mirror neurons, right, too. And that curiosity turns on our mirror neurons. That I believe that we all have magnetism too, to start to draw in what we need and what will help us grow. It'll also draw in what will actually push us to touch our deep wounds, right? Whether that's in relationship, it'll like, our system is so phenomenally intelligent that whatever's working in our system, both the attractive part of what you want to call it, create your reality or attract what you want, but also the more shadow realm of like, our system magnetizes the people and situations that will push us to the edge to need to grow, or bring us to that threshold where something in us has to meet it differently. And a lot of us just don't realize that's the time when curiosity comes in, what you're saying too. If I get curious about that versus, shut down, stop, better do something, better just check out with drugs or alcohol or something and numb myself because this is big, versus what is that?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, that's it. Curiosity. And it's like my greatest and late teacher, Liz Gilbert Grant, was a perpetual, innocent, a perpetual child of the universe, just always, with that wonder, like what's happening here? What could possibly be happening here? And it's that it is the willingness, isn't it? To have that curiosity. It's like a willingness to admit, I don't have it all summed up. I don't know. We can't possibly know. And in fact, one of her greatest teachings and, what we sort of really hold at Mana is that wherever there is upset,
it means we haven't yet understood something. There's still something outside of our awareness. We can't see it all, simply can't see it all. And yeah, curiosity is such a wonderful tool, isn't it? Yes, just I think the inspiration to stay innocent,
Yeah.
to stay innocent, especially in a relationship, it's not easy. Goodness.
Yeah.
Especially in relationships my relationship with my teenage son that is, it was incredibly challenging last year and it's mending very, very swiftly. But he really pushes he's born to, he's really born to push me, into, non-judgment and I just have to always stay curious. Like, why is he being like that? What's in there for him? It keeps me safe. I feel, it keeps us safe. To be curious in a way. It's a fluid space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the imagery of your mentor teacher too, and just the way you showed her eyes, like how much that's in you too. Like, it says, like, it's like how her essence is in you in a certain way too, because of how much you resonated with that as you were speaking, and I could almost feel that.
I love that. I love that. I hope that Liz is here through me. Goodness, come on, Liz, come on through. She was amazing. This was her passion also, your passions with people it was her passion. She just was, was always completely on the edge of her proverbial seat when it came to people and heart and relationship. And, was just, never took a position of, I know something. She's like, no, I don't know anything, I don't know anything, and just kept her really safe. Yeah. So I wonder, in your work, Shems, because you work with a lot of people. It sounds like you've worked with a lot of relationship couples and individuals. For yourself, what keeps you clear, and safe, or, as stable, so to speak, as you can be? Like, what are your strategies in the work you do?
That's a great question. I feel like I think there's like two sides to that. One of them is all the self-cultivated ability to run energy, right? And to ground our systems and to be in communion with nature, right? To be, like you said, fluid, you use that word, like I spend a lot of time in the ocean. I spend a lot of time walking in nature. I spend a lot of time communing under the stars and doing things that, for me, I think help me be in touch, help me be in right relationship, hopefully, and I know it's like a small level of what's possible too. Like, I have that humbled reality of, I know that, I imagine like 1,000 years back when the First Nations people had this way of operating where they knew exactly where the eagle was, a quarter mile away, making a call to tell you where the owl is or whatever, on a certain level. And I do feel like most of us are a little numbed and dumbed down because of the pace of life and society and culture. And I just been really fortunate to start Qigong very early in my life, and to work with breath and work with my body, and to have, an affinity to yoga and all those things that very early on that like allowed I would say my nervous system to run more electricity, more aliveness, and to be able to work with that and to like clear my system work. So that's one level.
Yes.
The other level, and I feel like this is the one that's harder for most of us, is in order to sit with people's like deep pain, or in order to be with what we could call the pain body, like Eckhart Tolle's terms, when someone's got like really dense, heavy energy that's maybe ancestral, generational, it's coming up really loud in their relationship, or where they're meeting something in life that's really hard. If our system, if we haven't met that in ourselves, if we haven't done the excavation work to turn toward and be with and learn to stay present and work with and allow what's in our system to move and be cleared and be met, and what happens is we'll be activated by other people's stuff. So this is the harder part of all of our journey maturing, that we're all on, is that anytime we want to work with people, or we want to be in situations with a lot of dense energy, a lot of things, let's just say undigested emotional pain, simple way to put it. Most of us, if we have any of that resonates with that, it will start to have our own system start getting active, and we may lose some of our acuity, our attunement. And I think once someone who is cultivating their skill set, like my mentors and all that too, have gotten really good at staying with being able to work with that if it gets activated in the presence of another.
Yes.
And to not let that color what's happening when working with someone else, or to even own and name it, which is really powerful to go like, wow, sitting with this couple, let's just say, and they're in a really heat thing and something's there, to be able to own like, wow, this touches also some of my anger, some of the deep hurt that I know in my system as well. So I'm with you. And also it means I've got to meet what's in me as well to support what's happening in you and to help guide what's happening in you. And I think that's that one of keeping that sense of humbleness to realize like we're all, in some ways, we're collectively evolving. We're on this healing path together. And part of our work is recognizing that like whatever I do is partially universal, right? Whatever work you do, all the work you've done in some level is partially universal. And this really becomes significant in group work in my experience. Like when we're at Sacred Sons guiding, in that realm, and we've got a group of 30 or 40 people or whatever it is, and people are popping off and big stuff's being touched. And for me, the more grounded and centered, but also the more my attention is primarily able to keep my centered attunement, heart awareness, breath being really strong. So in some ways, I'm tuning this instrument so much that I'm letting what's happening in the space tune to me. Instead of what happens to a lot of us is we start like tuning to what's happening in others.
Yes.
What's happening over there? Like what's popping off? What's being activated over there? And our system starts to overly feel or read unconsciously. And then we're in the mix and we lose some acuity. So that's been my experience of an ability to keep making sure that I'm staying as present, as clear, as loving awareness of what's happening in me. It doesn't mean I don't have stuff come up. It just means I'm working with staying enough that whatever comes up in me, I'm not letting that take the mic. In some ways, I'm observing like, there's some strong energy here. That's not me. I don't have to fully let that like completely come in too strong, or do I need to use that in the experience? And so to me, there's this like artwork on some level of like how we are in the relational field of what's happening, whether that's one person or couple or particularly in a group field. And what I've seen when folks don't do that well is one person has a bug emotional, it sets off emotions in another person. They start feeling big waves of emotion. And actually, many people in the room start to have big emotional energy. And if there isn't a grounding rod to start to ground that in and bring it into here and help that energy get digested together, it can go off the rails a bit.
Absolutely. It's so fascinating. And I think that, you're talking about your strategies and things you've cultivated as a space holder, but these are even, strategies for being in relationship, with anyone. And it's so interesting what you're saying about, when we feel that resonance, with someone else's baggage, that hits into ours, the way my teacher trained me and the way my team are trained is that, when we're doing one-on-one work with people, we have the perception that the client is coming in to clean us, that we're not clearing them, they're actually clearing us. And that in real time, as they're, feeling and experiencing, the baggage, we are having to, what we call pull the pin, so to speak, feel the resonance and move it, feel it, move it, feel it and move it, so to keep opening and deepening the space so more of their stuff can come through. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing just fascinates the living crap out of me. Like what we can do, with our heart to aid another. It just blows me away, and it's just I'm so fascinated. And then there's something else you said. It was like, also it's the popping off of big energetics, like even in relationship. And it seems to me that, when we make it significant, like it locks it in. It locks it in and it makes it a big deal. And, so you're talking about it like being that grounding rod, just like, yeah, no sweat. Like, doesn't matter what's popping up. It's like, no big deal at all. And then it does feel like, again, the space is freer. But, society, we're loading so much significance on people's baggage and judging it, and we're hiding from it. We're in shame about our own baggage, and there's all this significance around it. What do you think about that? Like where we're at as a collective with our own relationship with our own stuff?
First of all, I just absolutely was so touched just hearing you describe about that way that your teachers guided that sense of like people are coming to us to facilitate our own movement as well as theirs. And I just love that. And I actually watched my body go, ooh, yeah. I had like this wave of like, oh my gosh, yeah. And that description really touched me.
Beautiful.
And in regards to that question of like where society is at, yeah, it's, one thing I trust about what's happening on some level, because I know we all see it of like, whoa, where are we going? What's going on? Because it really is scary, the level of density and shutting down and what I call power over struggle that's still happening.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're describing too in society at a certain level is there's these systems that maybe began with whatever we want to call colonialization, or even the history of like how people have dominated each other and not honored a race, a culture, a community, women, just like simply put, this power over structure out of fear, out of like, if I don't do this, things are going to be okay. Or on the high horse of like, this is because of God or whatever BS that's coming from. That power over structure to me feels like it's almost getting louder again on some wave. Because what we're having to find in my belief is a power through structure that like my gifts and inspiration work I do, may they fuel yours, may they amplify yours, may the leaders really go, the only reason I'm a leader is because I'm here to like set a fire and light up everyone who's with me and to inspire and to have the power come through me to bring through theirs. And right now we've got this amplified again, modeling of a power over structure, right? So many different leaders in the world right now are totally tyrants and operating in that tyrannical control, fear-based. It's like amplified in a very bizarre way. Yeah. And my hope and my prayer is that has to get loud enough for the power through us as individuals, as communities, as families, as beloveds, comes through us enough that like our tolerance level for that gets so clear that we will not tolerate it on any level. Yeah. And unfortunately, like my experience has been, and for my own self too, it often has to hurt bad enough for us to be willing to grow and heal. And that's like some misbelief about reality that we've come into, because I don't think that's what's true. Like Gay and Katie Hendricks often say, like, that's the old model, but really the true growth is out of like curiosity and love and truth and wanting there. But humanity's still in a place where like, we don't change our diet till like it hurts bad enough. Like Correct. We don't make better choices often about things unless it's like out of, I want my body to look better rather than like spirit's telling me, Correct. Yeah. So that, and so there's a lot of collective like pain and huge amount of like questioning whether I want to be here too. Like I see people really questioning, do I want to be here? Like it's getting too much. And I'm hoping it's like ultimately, I think that's asking for us to resource ourselves back to a connection with the Aina, the planet, with life, with ourselves, with spirit, so that we start to like turn on something in us that's being asked to come to the surface to be able to meet reality and life more fully. And on the microcosm, most suffering in relationships, most entanglements and tension points to me are like, we're hitting this because something's being asked of each of us to find a deeper truth, or our growth edge. We're right at that threshold where we have to let go and let something die in us that's like in a survival mechanism. On the micro level, it's like, that kind of is our survival, but also our way of numbing and shutting down. And we're being asked to find something in us to be able to look someone we don't know in the eyes and love them anyway, if they're a different race, a different religion. And so I'm feeling that the heat is on. in that way.
Mm.
And I think the beauty part of that is I think a lot of us are starting to kind of hopefully find something that goes, wait a minute, I'm not participating in that story.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
I'm actually part of another one that's going, wait a minute here. We don't have to numb down. We don't have to shut down. We don't have to make others wrong, to stand in some misbelief about like right or wrong, religion, politics, all that. And so I feel like there's something good about this, even though at the same time, it's really painful and really horrific for so many, right?
So many. And it breaks my heart. Like I just, when you're talking about the power over that is wildly being demonstrated on the world stage, but then bringing that, like it's happening in families left, right, and center. And, we see it in huge amounts of estrangement in families, people just chopping each other off, not going to speak to you, you're out of my life. And feeling very justified with a whole ton of hurt and, have absolute understanding and compassion for the hurt. But if we're going to really get real, it's the same power over, bulldozing over, that's happening in families in the name of righteousness, and I think even there things are starting to clang. We're seeing it. It's becoming really obvious, like you're saying, out there. But I'm also sensing that people are recognizing they can't get away too much longer with justifying the major separations happening in family. It's just like we are being squeezed, yes or yes. Like we are being, it is the birthing canal, and it's going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. And I just think, how can we continue to point at tantruming politicians when we're just as tantrumous in our own families, throwing all the toys out of the cot because our family don't understand us, or like we are really being pushed toward a maturation, aren't we? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And so, we're very busy, aren't we, Shems? That we do. It's like, my God, it's our time. Like more and more people are waking up to this. I'm seeing they're like, shit, I got to heal this. I got to work this out in my family. Are you feeling that also, just around you? Like there's more and more almost real awareness, really, in people around that it's much closer in. The war, it's much closer in than just out there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's good that it's getting closer and there's more self-reflection, because what you just described, unfortunately, which is true, is that people are taking positions against their family, whether that's about like vaccines or religion or what's going on with the various wars on the planet, and having an opinion about that and thinking we know. And that's the part that I feel like relationally, that, and you said it so brilliantly with Liz, with your teacher here, is like, we don't know. And anytime I think I know what's going on, let's just say in politics on one side or the other, like my viewpoint is very narrow. I'm not in that seat. I don't know. No matter how much reading I do, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. And I do know what doesn't feel right. And I do know what doesn't land and feel like my heart goes, ooh, yeah, that's truth, right? So I come back to that piece of like, people are starting to go like, it doesn't feel good to be taking a position. It doesn't feel good to be like standing so strong that I'm right. And really, I feel like we're getting to that place where that hurts so bad that we're going to hopefully, and maybe it's person by person, couple by couple, workshop by workshop, people are going to go, I'd rather be connected than be right.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is it.
I would rather like, yeah, that's it. Like, and that's the evolution right now, is I'd rather be connected and a part of, and know who you are and find where we resonate than be right. Because we could die in our grave standing being right, and there's no benefit to it. Everyone loses.
That's right.
Hey, cool. My little buddies.
No problem.
Okay,
No problem at all.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah, confirmation. Yeah, that's right.
And
we
this is relationship to relationship with couples. This is the number one thing I'm doing my best to like dismantle or take people the robe off, because it's almost like some clothing people put on of like it like if I'm not right, I'm not okay. And they wear this like protective armoring or clothing that I need to be right. I need to know something. And then it's like right underneath that is I need to be validated. I need to be loved. I need to be seen. But the I'm right blocks being loved, being seen, being witnessed, being accepted. It's like a protective mechanism that numbs and actually blocks the flow or exchange of life, you know? So whenever we take off that jacket of like, maybe I'm not right. And Byron Katie was so brilliant to this in her work in that way of like, what if the opposite's true? Even though I feel so strongly, what if the opposite's true? Like, could I try that on of like, I don't actually know. And maybe I don't see it the way that I think I see it. And as soon as we enter that, we enter back to that curiosity, that wonder, that what wants to happen through me. What's the highest good for both of us, for all of us through what's here. And that's on the other side of who's right is what's the highest good. Like what's going to be mutually supportive, you know, whether that's a relationship ending, choosing different paths, whether that's actually another wave of some new bridge between us opening and the exchange of love, having a whole new chapter, right?
That's it. And, you know, the want to be right, like there's a difference between, like you said, you know what feels good. Do you know what feels like truth? You know what feels right for you. And it's so powerful to stand, you know, by that, but to then label it right and other wrong is quite insane. And you know, it doesn't mean we don't stand for something, but, you know, in families, you know, we might have our opinion, we might stand for that, but then to claim that as right and the other wrong, we're just as bad as, you know, the warmongers in that moment. You know, like the separation is huge. And you know, this conversation, Shems, is like, you know, we're coming up to Christmas, you know, and it is a very challenging time for a lot of people, even if they love their family to bits, even if, you know, we're a very close-knit family. So there's going to be so much tension, you know, and the subtle energies and the judgments and the expectations that are all flying around the airwaves, and people can get really hurt at this time of year and dread it even. And, you know, whether it's Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever the celebration is, doesn't matter, but it's obviously another opportunity for us to practice love and to stretch the heart and to, you know, be of service to something greater than our own opinion. And, you know, this time it's, you know, what would you say to people out there? Because, you know, families are, it's where all our lessons are. It's, you know, it's very hot for some people. And, you know, what would be some tips that you would share with people who are potentially, you know, not so excited about spending a few days with the extended family? Christmas time, what would you share?
Oh, it's so true. And thanks for presence in this one. It's and also there's so much like family collective history of things that have happened so many times this time of the year, you know, and part of that's like the toxicity of like materialism locked into this, what we call, you know, whether it's Hanukkah or Christmas, often it's been colored by this like materialism that shadows just pure connection and love and exchange of positive energy. And, you know, the first thing I'm really like to share is that how each of us, like, how do I resource myself? What resources me so that when I go into, let's just say, the family of origin home space that has, let's just say, undigested, heavy energy and some elephants in the room, at least one, of things that aren't talked about, things that are avoided, you know, things that have happened that never got resolved, right? Those are the big things that are often there and why we don't want to be there, and things are probably going to repeat. You know, like something's going to probably repeat because it hasn't been faced together and it hasn't been addressed. Yeah, the Christmas cocktail. So to me, the work always goes, those of us who are willing, and are going to, and want to have it experienced differently and want to suffer less. We go, how do I resource myself so I can enter that and be in that place of curiosity and openness, and most of all, acceptance of what is. There's an elephant in the room. Can I just accept that swell? My mom always shuts down. My dad always gets drunk and says things that are hurtful to my brother and sister or me. How do I actually meet that with I'm willing to witness that and watch that, and I'm willing to meet whatever in me that is getting touched by that, and I'm willing to breathe into it and make space for it. That means I need to leave the room and take a walk outside, which is what I've done for many years. Is when things get a little heavy or dense, I got a dog. I'm going to take a walk outside with my dog, and I'm time to go. And I'm going to resource myself. I'm going to let myself find center, do whatever I need to do to kind of calm my system and recalibrate. And I think of it as retune my instrument, because if I don't do that, my instrument's going to go out of tune with the rest of the instruments in the room, and the orchestra is going to be and so for me, for the first thing is each of us taking more ownership and responsibility to tune our instrument, and to know when it's starting to go out of tune. I'm starting to have all kinds of negative thoughts. I'm starting to not like my dad. I'm starting to worry and stress. Okay, what do I do? Do I need to go sit in the bathroom for 5 minutes because it's snowing outside and raining, and resource myself? I'm okay. I can handle this. I can love and accept my father and mother. Or at the worst, I don't want to be here. This is a toxic environment. I love my family, but you know what? I'm choosing something different. That's also okay. You don't have to go out of obligation. So that's the other side of it. If you can't stay in tune, and it's let's just say re-traumatizing the nervous system. People do this. They go into environments that re-traumatize them every single year. And it's well, what if you made a choice to not go?
Yes.
And you took care of yourself, and you did something that was more nourishing and more in alignment with your truth. So that's the other side of it at the extreme level, is don't participate in a toxic environment if you don't have the strength to handle it. It's kind of don't go in a sparring ring unless you're ready to spar.
That's it.
And take care of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And when we potentially go into the bathroom and think, shit, I need to take time out from my nuts family, and you have that breath, or even potentially, like you said, choose to leave. It's so key that we choose to leave, recognizing that's right for us, but it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make what they're in wrong, because people aren't wrong for having baggage. People aren't wrong for having potentially limited viewpoints or selfish ways of being. They're not wrong. We must remember that people are doing the best. They know how, with the level of awareness they have. In any given moment, people are just really behaving in a way that feels right to them. And you just, when you recognize it, you can't label wrong, bad. You can't judge. It doesn't make any sense, to have that, what we call a bigger picture, to come out and see more of the situation. Like you were talking about your beautiful dad, and what he went through, and to have the understanding that people have got so much upset in there that, we often talk about this at Mana. I question our students, how much of your childhood can you remember? Really, how much? People are like, oh, not much at all. Really, from month to month to month, from year to year, how much can you actually remember? Oh, not much. Okay, so there's a lot you don't even know about your own life. And then we pretend to know everything about another's. It's wild.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, yeah, I know what happened to him. That happened, yeah. He was, when he was young, yeah, I've got it all sewn up. I know my parents were like that. We have not the first clue what they went through. And yet we're ready to be right. It's wild. It hurts me. I know, I get why we do it, because we're all just trying our best, but it kind of hurts. I just feel like it hurts my heart that so many beautiful people out there are getting slammed by their own families. Wow. You know, and you, as we know, like the people that are behaving the worst need the most love. Like they're the ones that need the most. But no, we chop them off, put a label on, and throw them in the bin. It's wild. Like, you know, we've got to own this. You know, we've got to really look at what we're up to. You know, if we're going to grow, we've got to own it. Like I've done it. You know, like I can even do it momentarily. My thoughts with the father of my children, who challenges the living shit out of me. You know, like he is my greatest teacher by far. And I can see occasionally, you know, when it comes in, like this energy where I'm just like, oh, I just wish I didn't have to deal with that, which is violent as hell energetically. It's a sloth. You know, these are the people in our lives. There's so much, isn't there? There's so much for us to discover in relationship. So much. And I wanted to ask you also, Shems, you know, about the phenomenon of feeling even alone. You know, like where you know, a lot of people feel totally alone, even in families, even in relationship with people all around them, maybe even the center of their community, and they still feel alone. What do you think that is?
It's such a deep one. I mean, that's the ultimate toxicity of our world, right? Is that we can live in New York City with, you know, millions of people around us and still feel alone. Like the ultimate toxicity of like where we live in our own little inner worlds that don't have enough exchanges of, and of course, like I live in Hawaii, right? Where it's so much sweeter. And overall, there's a lot of things that happen that aren't so good too. And there's a lot of toxicity and things that happen. Overall, though, the aloha spirit of like just saying hi is there so people feel connected. Right. And there's some reason that we can live in our own little inner world and it's so loud. And unfortunately, it's such a mental one. And I think that's why it's so hard, is that what happens is that the mind, you know, I think of it as an engine that's way overacting and burning up too much fuel. Whereas the heart is a much more efficient engine. That like when we're in the space of like the heart is open, the heart's connected, we're in our heart and we're utilizing the mind, but the mind isn't like this disconnected thing that's like living like an alien on the planet, which is really the truth is that why we feel alienated is we have this mental thing that goes on that a large percentage of time is literally insane. Making up stories about our families, like you just beautifully described it. Like we know some history points of our family, like I said about my father. I don't know my whole father's journey. I don't know how many times he loved. I don't know, like, you know, what, I don't know all the things that unfolded for him. I don't know his inner world of like what he deeply longs for. I could imagine it, but I don't know. And so you're just beautifully describing that because we're in our minds and we don't feel one another. We don't attune. We don't like see someone suffering and like not just give them $1 on the street or a bagel. We don't just sit with them for a moment and just like make a heart connection, whether we say a word or not, but give a moment of generous attention, you know? And I feel like the currencies of love, like the currencies of where love gets exchanged are attention. Like, oh, I'm with you. Like when we love, like one of my beautiful dogs here, when I love them, I'm generous with my attention. I want to connect with them. I want to see them. I want to receive what they're bringing to me, and there's exchange. And so if that's not happening in your family system with quality of exchange of attention, we feel alone if it's not happening in our world. The other one is just appreciating, like I appreciate who you are for all you know and all you've done and all you're doing. And I appreciate just the way that you meet me. Like we don't have those exchanges very often. Our exchanges are mental ones that are, unfortunately, they're loaded with like assessing, criticizing, reading, wondering, doing differences and distinctions that divide us, which is insanity, rather than going, what's our shared point of touch? What do I know about you that you know about me that we share, that we love, where the mind goes and it assesses. And what's right beneath that is because we do feel threatened and not safe. We're afraid of being judged again because of these religious structures that have us, you know, dividing and going, what's right, what's wrong, who's okay, who's not, who's a sinner, who's not, all these things that are absolute toxicity. And there's a realm below that that's more like, can I just be in love with myself and this tree and the fact that I can breathe fresh air and then I can go to a store and buy food? There's something that we all need. And unfortunately, if we carry a lot of pain that we haven't met and haven't had, supportive guides like I've had, or mentors or dear friends that check in on and love us, we can get more and more isolated in some kind of world that like feels like I'm not okay.
Yes, that's
Right. And
right.
I'm alone and I'm not okay. And I don't feel seen and loved and accepted. And I'm not even able to give that either, because my world's hurting because of my stories about myself and my thoughts about myself and my worries about myself and all those things that get so loud in us when we're not in our heart, just like loving, accepting who are us. And then it goes outward. Right. Like you said, like we go in a family situation, the reason it's toxic is each individual has like these stories about how things should be or shouldn't be, and these judgments and these criticisms, and not simply a like, I feel and love you unconditionally. I may not agree with you. I may not like what you believe in, but something in me just embraces you with my heart anyway, like a really precious mother does, right? Mother accepts, like you probably with your teenage son, you have this ability to kind of, even if he triggers you, you have this unconditional, deep love and acceptance that you probably return to again and again and again. That is the majority of your experience with him, right?
Yes, that's right. And I you kind of nailed it. Like it's funny how, that feeling of aloneness and isolation, even in our own families at Christmas time, it can feel so different. Out in the world, it's I've noticed that we kind of can relate to that experience, or people that are having that experience, as quite a passive thing. Like, oh, I'm alone. I feel alone. Poor little old me. It's kind of got this energy to it, like it's passive. But I've found that it's actually loaded with judgment. That judgment, this is one of the keys from the humanity training. We pull apart the metaphysics of judgment and what's actually happening in the airwaves when we're in judgment of others or being judged. And what people don't recognize is that actually it's a physical energy. Judgment, it doesn't just hang out up here. It actually physically travels and pushes people, literally pushes bodies away from you. Like, even if people wanted to come and be close, if we're heavily judging outwards, they can't get in. They can't get in. We've had so many fascinating experiences, Shems, in that workshop of literally seeing and feeling the immediate effects physically of judgment. And it's so powerful. And, coming back to what we're talking about like families judging each other. Well, you're a Trump supporter and you're this, and we're just smashing each other with right and wrong. We're actually also pushing away connection, like avidly, really pushing it away. So I always ask people when they go, oh, I feel so lonely. I'm like, check out your judgments. Just check them out. And no problem if you're judging, no problem. We all go into it, and it's not a big deal. But check it out, because you'll be judging heavily. Even the whole, the world's not safe. Massive judgment. I can't trust men. Massive judgment. Like this huge, blanket judgments that are going out on people. And then, we have people experiencing loneliness. It's just wild. Like, I don't talk to many people when I'm working on, during the day I do, but my children go to school and I'm not really talking, to many people. I don't have many contacts in this city. I've newly arrived here. I don't have a lot of people physically in my life, but I feel absolutely surrounded by richest connection, because I am walking down the street and literally connecting to everyone. And it's like that's available for everybody, isn't it? It's available for us. There's no excuse to feel alone. There's simply no excuse. Well, I'm not going to have it.
Yes, I
We're
love
not
that.
going to have it. We're not going to
Yeah,
trick
it's a
you.
victim story,
It
right?
sure is.
It's
Thank
a
you.
victim, and if you're in a victim story, then you're going to see people as heroes or villains,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Up on the pedestal, underneath you, on the carpet. It's
Yeah,
it's it's wild. It's wild. There's so many fascinating little games that we play as human
yeah.
beings.
The sad part, Chrissy, was just so it was we don't like. I so appreciate like hearing how you describe it in a workshop because just we don't have environments that are helping us discover that this is the program I'm operating in, which you
Yeah.
just so beautifully described. There's a program of like I'm alone. I feel like that, but then internally, like you said, there's basically a motor running of beliefs and judgments and stories about reality that's probably like 5% true.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the insanity of the mind is it's like not accurate. Even like when I say I'm really angry because like someone just did something, my anger is like a certain percentage that moment with that person, but it has like the person who almost hit me yesterday in a car. It has my dad yelling at me when I was 5.
Okay.
The anger isn't just now. And that's the point. The more I own it, like, wow, anger is being touched in me because of this, but it's got deeper roots than right now, you know? And I really feel like we return back to this place of like, how do we keep returning to Christmas or to our holiday gatherings is like, what if we see it as a continual opportunity to discover what's in the way for me of being more loving, more accepting. And that's the maturing in our system when we're really maturing, where we're going, let me just take ownership for any place in me that's participating in creating suffering, that's participating in generating an experience that isn't enriching for everybody in it. And I
Oh.
love that's feel like that's what you're implying. You live in France, you're new there, you're walking around the city, but the openness of your heart, the willingness to make contact has you have a beautiful experience. And that's the maturity in us is I think the more we are willing to face what's in us and keep lovingly dismantling any of the protective mechanisms, any of the judgments, any of the stories, and to get true to like, what's really here? What's the genuine essence of this soul being that doesn't have to perform, doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to be somebody, doesn't have to be successful, has a place here on the planet because I'm here. And I don't have to play the game that I've got to like be a social media like savior or whatever it is that we want to be, or all these things that like none of that really will ever be fulfilling, but just who I am and the discovery process is enough. And then can I meet my parents with that? Can I meet my siblings with that? And then can I have the love and compassion for them that like ultimately we've got things in the way of just really loving, accepting who we are. And if I can generate and be that, then that environment becomes softer, and maybe and I feel like this is the powerful move that I really trust that you're bringing and being and flowing as you're going, I'm not going to settle for that victim story. I'm going, who are you being in your family and what gifts are you bringing? Are you stepping into the leadership, which is what it is, to actually bring something new that's coming from love and compassion and acceptance and of course self-care and communion with self and resourcing ourselves so that we can be the waves that keep lapping on the shore and changing the topography of the earth, right? Like we're that. So we're changing the topography of our family system. And I know that like even just in June, July, August, when I was with my dad in his last chapter, I was having another opportunity to be with deeper layers of my history of hurt from him, because he's having these fits of upset and anger as he's suffering in his body. And he's saying things and being things that go right to my boy, that go right to the most tender wounds in my system that I've spent decades healing, and finding, oh, great spirit. Thank you. You put me right in the fire again to like look at another level. And I felt grief. I had days of grief. I don't think anything in the world could have had me touch that grief like I did sitting with my dad, looking at him and feeling his suffering and feeling mine, feeling the deepest suffering in me that perfectly got catalyzed in his death journey and in the way he was being and the layers of stuff that was coming up for him that like was so overwhelming for me in some levels and it was overwhelming because it was surfacing up so much of my deepest stuff that nothing else would. And so my sense is, each time we have a challenging experience, it's perfectly organized for us to have an opportunity to meet ourselves and meet what wants to bubble up, to be allowed to move and to be loved and to be released and to be again and again and again. If we see family and Christmas as an opportunity to go, what's going to be touched in me this time? And here's my opportunity again to be with and face and love and breathe into and allow for the maturation of my own soul journey and also for the benefit of all around me. That's what I like to invite people into. And that's a radical responsibility, you know? That's a courageous willingness. And yet that's what the world needs right now. It's like courageous, heroic willingness to go, all right, what's coming up in me? And am I willing to take responsibility that there's some medicine for me in this? And it's not about them.
Oh, I'm so excited. I just get so excited when my fucking language. Oh my God, that's so much of what you just said. I am cheering on, especially the courage piece. I'm like, humanity, where is our courage? Like, we are a powerful mob. What is happening? Why are we pretending we're not? Enough. Do you know, enough. And I don't think I can do it any other way than treat people really powerfully these days. Do you know, when you were talking about that, I had this flash of this beautiful woman that is coming through the mana work at the moment, and like an absolute Trojan, pulling herself to pieces, making the moves, being more vulnerable than ever before. Like the trauma that this woman had, I get unbelievable. I'm so incredibly impressed with her. And the first night we met, when she was a shell and everything was up in her face because she was in the course room with me, and she was just like started to shake catatonically. I can't do it. I don't know. I was like, enough of that rubbish. Said, no, I'm not buying any of it. And she was just like, what? So incredibly shocked. And I just shocked it out of her. She's like,
yeah.
Oh, because she felt safe. Of course, I made her feel safe, but I was like, no, I'm not having it. I'm not having this. You're not weak. No. I know you're powerful. Now, come on, let's get to it. Do you know? And literally just in a second. And Liz taught me that, you know, my teacher would teach me that, you know, people are sometimes stuck in such thick energy fields, so thick that we often have to crack through it to free them if we pander around them. And I feel like that with the human race as a whole at the moment. I'm just like, for God's sake, like, can we just throw some lightning bolts in the space and wake everyone up out of their reverie? We're powerhouses. Powerhouses. And I get it. I get it. Like, I totally understand, like, what I can gather that, you know, of how hurt we all are. Like the courage piece, Shems, like that's exactly it. And I just hope anyone listening is inspired to activate their courage. We've all got so much courage. Do you know, we are courageous in there. We've just got to tap back into it and do courageous things. And remember, do you know, like we sweat together, you know, mana, we sweat and we push. Oh my God, it's hot in there. Do you know? And it's like, no, and we find that inner courage. And actually, I do think that these experiences that challenge us beyond the beyond, they do reawaken a big chunk of courage for good. It's like you can't go back. It's sort of, do you know what I mean? I feel like courage just grows and grows and grows. And love courage, you know, like when we have those wins with our families, well, look, love works. I can be vulnerable, or I can sit and be accepting of my father, you know, and we sort of get our certainty, you know, again. And I just think that courage is, where we need to place it at the helm, you know. We really need to place it at the helm, especially going into Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah, and, you know, another thing you said, the discovery path is enough. That was gold, Shems. Like, that's it. We don't need to be anything.
Yeah.
Do we? It's just the discovery. Like, what can we discover here? You know, and I love that we are going to be facilitating together next September in Germany. And I just have picked something up that I think is wonderful for us to discover, and that is that your ancestry is German and were harmed by Russians in the war. My ancestors are Russian and were harmed by Germans, you know, in that war. And we're meeting in Germany, you know, with the place where your ancestors were, where mine were, in the camps. And it's like, wow, like, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? And like what you know, the subtle threads that spirit weaves for healing on all levels, we will never, ever, ever understand. But I just think that's like, I wonder what we're just going to discover on your ancestral homelands. How do you feel about spending time in Germany?
Wow, it feels right on time. You know, it's been an intention at some point, and I'm like, wow, this is the right time to go. To be invited to facilitate with you and our dear brother that we're going to be facilitating with, and to go to this space and to come into it as a mixture of like having an opportunity to bring some gifts and offering, but also to commune with a really special place in Germany and have a really deep purpose. My wife and I are also talking about actually renting out our house, or having my mom come stay in our house, and going and living in Europe for some of next summer into the fall as a journey, because my wife spends time leading retreats in France, and so leading pilgrimages in Mary Magdalene sacred spots. So she has a really beautiful, deep connection to that area in kind of more southern France that she's gone to for many years. And so I'm saying yes to something really big right now, you know, stepping out of our home life and maybe going and having a really special chapter as part of this journey in Germany that's opening up right now, really fresh. So that's exciting. And I want to also just name that I felt touched by your fierceness. And I just really honor that, Chrissie. And like just the way you said that, of like how you snapped her out, it reminded me of like my favorite teacher, Katie Hendricks, and her teachings, and being in the room with her facilitating. Like I felt your essence sharing that with hers too, if she would just wake people out of trances and just dissolve it right there with a certain degree of like fierce love and potency and compassion. And I really honor and see that in you, and feel like such an excitement as well, knowing that you're walking this and giving this. And it was a reminder to me too, because I have a few couples I'm working with where I think I could bring some more fierceness. And I just got a transmission from you in that way, where I may be being a little tolerant of some behaviors. And so it's so great how we're gifts to each other, you know, and there's always room to like receive each other's gifts. And I feel like I just got one from you in this way that will bring a little more juice to like how I meet the next months, you know? Yeah.
That's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. Well, we have that beautiful gathering to look forward to. I think it's September 16 to 21 with Maxie, with his beautiful project, Looking In.
Going out, looking in.
Going out, looking in. That's it. And then, of course, we have Remembrance, which will be at next year as well in September. So that will be a beautiful experience. And I love, you know, being with you this year at Remembrance, although we hardly were able to spend any time, but it was just so good, you know, walking by. Love you, Shems. Chrissie, love you. You know, just being able to just to work alongside each other was really, really special, and it created this conversation. So, thank you to the Sacred Sons for that, and thank you so much for this conversation, Shems. It's been potent, really potent. Lots of potent gems in there for the people, and like how can people find you? I mean, we'll publish links and what have you, but is there something special that you'd like to invite people to or into that you're offering these days?
You know, I actually created a relational course for men and partners with that we just launched with Sacred Sons. I spent last winter videoing, and so it's pretty juicy as far as if anyone's lit by this. To me, it's like me doing my best to create a video series that has like some of these concepts, but also practical applications to try them, and it's super affordable and a great way if someone's like, hey, I could use something where I could cultivate some of these things we're talking about and have an opportunity to absorb more of this way of relating that we don't have access to. I feel like, relationship is the front line of human evolution, without a doubt, in my experience. And we could all use more environments that help us to cultivate and practice and understand how to, in some ways, update our operating system relationally. And so for those who may hear this, that's a great entry point too for something that could be really fun to explore, that I'm proud of and excited about, and feel like it has a lot of value for folks who have the time to kind of try something on and explore it and then see what goes from there.
And so for couples listening, what, how does it, what can it assist? What are the main issues that you see in couples that your work will assist with?
At the very core level is there's another way for us to listen that's a whole being experience and to communicate from. And there's a way of us cultivating how we feel and read each other and how we listen in a way that generates safety. Because a lot of times, things for couples, no matter what it is, the escalation happens quite fast. And to me, we need to have a way to learn that, like, one of us, let's just say, goes out of tune as an instrument and is upset and has some anger and some hurt. And when they start talking about it, it triggers this one and they meet, and there's like defensiveness and ways that we go. To me, this program is a lot about how do one of us stay sober enough that we don't get intoxicated when the other goes off. Yep. And we have the ability to meet ourselves and that partner in a way that helps to actually settle that back down to return to like some degree of understanding, or at least some degree of a new agreement or choice that allows us to get out of that often recirculating pattern of behaviors that entangles us into getting stuck and into basically burning up a lot of our love and creative energy. So that's one thing there. The second is I think it helps people on an individual level have the ability to keep practicing and cultivating ways that allows us to have literally more relational capacity, more ability to be with situations, environments, challenging people, whether that's our partner or our parent or our boss, and have more tools and skills to meet ourselves so that we keep increasing our capacity to show up and meet whoever and whatever with more, skills, more consciousness, more awareness, and more ability to actually have a positive impact on a conversation and take the lead and steer it. Because to me, that's ultimately what this course is about, is each of us taking more responsibility to be the creators and leaders in our relationship to generate the kind of experiences we want. And that comes down to the fierceness on some level. It's like, how do I take more responsibility to not complain about what's not working over there, and actually to create what I want and to help promote experiences relationally that are a win-win instead of a lose-lose.
Beautiful. And can people do it that aren't in relationship? Can people come?
Yeah, they can. It was geared for men because I videoed it for Sacred Sons. However, men and women would benefit from it, but it's stronger specifically for the male archetype on some level, or the masculine us, because it challenges some aspects of man and what's healthy for us and how we relate with the feminine within ourselves and with our partners. But I think anybody watch it would benefit from it too.
Sounds amazing. I'd love to do it. Sounds incredible.
And I think it's totally on sale right now till for at least the end of the year. It's like a $200 entry point, which we designed it to be more like $500 or something. So it's really affordable and available, and a good resource that's available forever when someone chooses to watch it and explore it.
Oh, that's invaluable. That's an invaluable investment into relationship and family. Beloveds, anyone listening, grab it. Grab it. Oh, Shems, so beautiful to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I am just thrilled to connect with you more, and so excited to facilitate together in September and continue our friendship. Thank you so much for being here.
Honored, Chrissie. Thank you. Really sweet to be present with you and listen and get to know you a little bit more as well in your journey. And thanks for having me on. And thanks for listeners for taking the time to listen to us and receive this.
So, thank you, everybody listening. Much love to everyone. Aloha.
Aloha.